Hi, girls and boys. For our literacy lesson today, we're learning to identify the purpose and the audience of narrative text. So, as you would have seen, we're learning about narrative text this term, and in particular, we're focusing on fairy tales. So, I want you to think about exactly why do you think people write? What's the purpose of people's writing? Everybody writes for a purpose. Why? Why do they write? Now, I'd like to remind you of this purpose pie. There are three reasons why people write. The first one is to persuade. The P for pie is persuade. And I don't think we're persuading anybody in a fairy tale. The next reason or the purpose why people write is to inform. Do you think in a fairy tale we're trying to inform people? No, I didn't think so either. The other reason, the E of the pie, is to entertain. Do you think when people write persuasive, when people write narratives, they want to entertain people? If that's what you thought, well, you're absolutely right. People write narrative stories like fairy tales to entertain, and it's all about holding people's attention through imaginative stories, interesting stories, things that are funny, things that are maybe dramatic or have adventure in them. So that's the purpose of a narrative, girls and boys. To help you learn about the writer's purpose for fairy tales, I'd like you to do the activity which is mentioned in your book packs. So, Wilf, what am I looking for? In your book, I'd like you to answer the three questions that are written in your pack. The first question is, why do you think authors write stories or narratives? And the clue is, their job is to... You work out the rest. The next question that I'd like you to answer in your book is, why would anyone read a narrative? Why would anyone read a narrative? So think about that one. And your clue is, maybe if you're feeling a little bit something, you might read a narrative or a fairy tale. And the third question I'd like you to think about is, think of a narrative that you've recently read. So maybe some of the stories that you've been listening to online, and think about why it was chosen. Why did the teachers choose it? Think about if you liked it or not. Think about how did you feel when you were reading it. Did you get persuaded to do something? Did you get lots of information? Was it entertain? So I'll look out to reading your answers in your books for those three questions. The next part of our lesson is all about the audience of narratives. So if you are reading a narrative, there are lots of different audiences. An audience really refers to who are the people that the writer wants to attract. So think about some of the stories that we've been reading to you or that you've read. The author who wrote the stories would have been thinking about a particular group of people that they wanted to attract. Now, for narratives or for imaginative text, usually the audience is grouped by age groups or gender groups. So, like the example that I gave you, you can see in the booklet. For example, a story like The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Who do you think would read that book? When the author, Eric Carle, wrote The Very Hungry Caterpillar, who was he thinking? Was it for us, older people? Or was it for young boys in high school or young girls in high school? Or was it for kids who were probably in kindergarten and year one and year two? Is that what you thought? Well, that's true. Then the other example that you can see in your booklets is a book like Dork Diaries. Now, that's a story about a little girl, a young lady, who talks about all her experiences in high school and things like that. Who do you think the author of Dork Diaries had in mind as their audience? Girls, boys, old people, very young people, kindies and year ones, preschoolers? Or do you think it was more for people who are primary school age? It's important that you identify who is the audience of a text and adjust your text or change it around so that it suits them. Your activity for today, which is what I'm looking for is a sheet that looks like this. You can see that there's a box that has a text in it. The first one is called Nursery Rhymes. I want you to write in the box over here who you think the audience. Maybe it's the age group, or you can mention girls or boys. The one underneath is George's Marvelous Medicine. Who do you think is the intended audience for this story? Which age group? I would think it's for girls and boys. So you're writing the answer in the box here. Here's another one. Where's Spot? One of my favorite stories when I was a baby and that I read to my own baby kids, which they loved. Here's another one called, I think this one, not sure you can see it very well, but it's called It by Stephen King. And it's called a thriller. It's got lots of scary and adventurous things in it. Who do you think would like to read a thriller? So your job, and what I'm looking for, is that you can identify the audience of all these texts and write the answers. And in the last two boxes, it says here, you can write your own text. So think of your own story that you have read and write the audience, the intended audience, or maybe have a look at your bookshelf. So I hope you enjoy that, girls and boys.